L. This is already there. So this slide is appropriate for my lecture. That's why I use this slide. Audio lingual approach. Last night you already learned about the direct method, and previously grammar translation method. Audio lingual approach. So audio, what does audio mean?
Sound.
Sound, yeah. Mainly focus on listening, right? The sounds. So previously, the grammar translation method is the very first method. Later, some scholars were against about the grammar translation method because of its limitation, right? Translating from foreign language to mother tongue and mother tongue to foreign language. Later, they changed into the direct method, right? Using the target language in the classroom. In the direct method, the grammar was studied inductively, right? Last night, you already know about it. Mostly, teacher needs to create the context in order to teach the dialogues related to the context. And also the pronunciation also plays an important role. Actually, the oral fluency, not to get the oral fluency for the direct method. After the direct method, the next one is the audio lingual approach. Because direct method has also some limitations, right? Because there's some challenges or the language background of the learners. And the next thing is it's also very challenging for a teacher. That's why audio lingual approach was demanded by the situation. So here it includes 10 points. Audio lingual approach definition, background, characteristics, right? So many things in this lecture. So let's see the first one, definition. Audio lingual approach, what does it mean? Mainly focus on the audio lingual skills rather than reading and writing. Mainly use the pattern-based practice, speaking by using the pattern practice. In the previous lecture, the direct method, there is no the pattern practice, only the oral fluency, right? Teacher, students need to think directly into English, need to express, they need to experience the new words that they learn. That's why teacher can use the illustrations, objects, other teaching learning materials. Here, audio lingual approach is mainly extensive use of pattern practice. You are already familiar with this, pattern practice technique. I think some of you will be using the pattern practice technique in your classroom. Yes, actually, I'm not feeling well. Sorry. Yeah. No. Okay. History. Let's see the history. So the demands appear during the World War II, right? United States required the linguists to give the special training program to the soldiers. That's why the fast and the easy foreign language acquisition. Because of these demands, the linguistics turn into the audio lingual approach. It is also called the Army Specialized Training Program, right? Also called the Army Method. Actually, whenever you think about like the language theory and educational theory, most of them are used in the military sector, especially. That's why the audio-lingual approach is also called the ARMY method, right? This has the obvious impact on the language scholars and also the way of teaching the foreign languages. So why is it called the ARMY method? What do you think? Why is it called the ARMY method? What are the demands for the soldiers in order to learn the language by using the audio-lingual approach? Because in a war or in a battle, there are the many soldiers who come from different countries and different backgrounds, right? That's why they need to know each other. They need to be able to communicate each other. And the other requirement is to get the information from the enemies. That's why the soldiers or the detectives, right, like the responsible person, need to learn the language of their enemies. So, in this way, that's why it is also called the ARMY method. Now, let's see the first caller, right? Based on Blomfield's technique, or the like memorization and repetition in simple foreign language patterns. Students need to memorize a lot. Students need to practice again and again when they were taught by the audio-lingual approach. The main thing is to absorb, right, its basic structure from the informant or native speaker. Because in the camp training, in the camp, soldiers were taught by the native speaker by using the audio-lingual approach based on their patterns. And together, students learn how to speak this language as well as to understand much of its basic grammar. Because as in the previous slide, it is also used the pattern-based speaking and practice. That's why. Oh. One man Cholam. Mahalo. Namu Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi Chile, Mia Dudira. Wow, down Chile. Recording in progress. So it is also called the oral approach. Oral. What does it mean? AUIL, oral. OIL, oral means the spoken. AUIL, oral means the audio or listening, right? Firstly, you need to listen a lot and then produce into the language process. That's why it is also called the oral approach by Charles Spry. So he argued that, right, language should be taught using intensive oral drilling or its basis patterns. Now, when the teacher uses this method, he needs to produce the proper pronunciation and intonation. Once you go to the bookshop, you will see some speaking books based on the pattern base, right? Spoken patterns or something like that with the title. That's why I assume that these kinds of books are based on the audio-lingual approach. You can substitute the words. So from the teacher side, need to give the proper pronunciation and intonation, as well as for the student, they need to produce correct pronunciation and intonation. So now let's see the beginning of contrasted analysis. The scholar Price published his principle, right? Uh, in his book, the problems of learning a foreign language were attributed to the conflict of different structural systems, differences between the mother tongue and the foreign language, like differences in the grammar or sounds and structures. Mhm. Right? So the idea of the contrasted analysis is presented in his book. That's why the main thing is in order to prevent the potential problems in the second language acquisition. That's why it is also called a systematic comparison, right? Between the foreign language and the mother tongue, the differences. These kind of challenges and problems appear when you use the audio lingual approach. Next one, emergence of the audio linguistic approach. The next thing is, Richards claimed that this is a kind of transforming the language teaching from an art to science for the student, to achieve the mastery of a foreign language effectively and efficiently. So here, the concept, transforming the language teaching from an art to science. So for this concept, what comes to your mind from art to science? What are the characteristics of art? What are the characteristics of science? This is a kind of changing, right? Using the audio lingual approach is kind of changing or language teaching from an art to science. So when you think about the concept of art, it is creativity, right? It also based on your perception, your beliefs. It's a kind of, how can I say, open, right?
Imagination.
Yeah. And for the science, what are the characteristics of science? Yes, science is factual,
Very
system,
good.
proven, yeah, and accurate, right? So Richards claimed that this is a kind of transforming from the art to science in the language teaching areas, so that the student will achieve the mastery of the another language. Now let's see the main characteristics of the audiolingual approach. Here, the phonology, right, related to the sound systems and sounds and morphology. Morphology is changing word form from one form to another, like by adding prefix or suffix, like that. Here, it should be taught by using the phonology, morphology, and syntax of the language, right? The structure, like patterns of the language. So all these patterns can be learned, contrasted analysis of the differences between the native language and the target language. You can compare and you can analyze the differences between your native language and the target language. In this way, a student will know better when they make comparison, when they learn by comparing between two languages. So this approach is also based on four skills, right? Listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Because in the previous slide, you already see like the oral approach. That's why oral, the listening, OIL oral, speaking. So listening and listening in both need to be given the first. But the next characteristic is here, it should be presented orally, right? Firstly, not using the materials. Teacher need to produce orally or like modeling, right? Teacher needs to model the sentence pattern and the model sentences. Here, the reading materials are not presented in the first stage. So it should be presented orally. At the time, student needs to listen to what the teacher stated or what the teacher said. And reading and writing activities follow later based on their previous learning. That's why the basis is like the repetition and also oral drills and memorization play an important role. That's why students need to repeat again and again to the patterns given by the teacher. And oral drills, firstly, the teacher will model and also they need to practice oral drills individually or in chorus, right? They also need to memorize patterns. So these are some basics of the audiolingual approach. For example, in a bookshop, I found a book like that, written by an English teacher. For example, like that, it is time to blank, like that. Here, you can substitute many words, like it is time to change, it is time to go to the market, it is time to go bed, or like that. And also, I used to blank, right? You can substitute and you can fill the words based on this pattern. There are lots of patterns here in the book. The book is the Learn Faster, Speak Smarter, written by Sia Thompson Idolo, right? So this the structure or the organization of this book is mainly related to the audiolingual approach. Now let's see the activities. The first one, repetition. Students need to repeat what the teacher says, right? Without looking at the printing materials. That's why they can improve their listening skill and also their attention. And then he can add a few words based on the first sentence. For example, here, example, I used to know him, or student also said, I used to know him. And you can expand this sentence, that I used to know him years ago, or like that. You can expand, you can stretch this sentence. Next one, inflection, right? Inflection, or changing the word form in the sentence, right? For example, I bought the ticket. I bought the tickets. He bought the candy. In the place of he, you can replace she and other subject. Right. So the first one is repetition. Repetition and expanding. The second one is inflection, right? Changing the word form. That's why in the previous slide, you already know like the morphology, right? Changing the word forms. Another activity is replacement, or replacing the one word by another word. For example, he bought this house cheap. He bought it cheap. Like that. Or Helen left early. She left early. You can replace. and restatement. Restatement means student rephrase the utterance of the sentence produced by the teacher and also address is to someone else. For example, tell him to wait for you. Yeah, you restate, wait for me. And the teacher will say, ask her how old she is. You will respond, you will restate, how old are you? Like that. This is also called the activity of restatement. So replacement, restatement, and the next one is completion. Completion means filling the necessary words. This is the common activity that we are very familiar in the language exercises. For example, I will go my way and you go, right? You can replace I will go. The student will repeat, well, say, I will go my way and you go yours. And the next one is transposition. A change in word order is necessary when a word is added. For example, I'm hungry. So by using so am I. For example, I went to the market yesterday. So did I. Right? I will go to the shopping mall tomorrow. So will I. Something like that. Transposition. The next one is contraction. Contraction. Minimizing the words. For example, put your hand on the table. Instead of writing on the table, you can replace other word. Like there, put your hand there. Here, we need to think about the single word, which stands for phrase or clause. The next activity is a transformation. Transformation, already familiar, like the stylistic transformation or grammar, changing from one pattern to another. Right? Here, changing from negative to interrogative, or through changing in tense or mood, voice aspects, or modality. Right? The transformation. For example, he knows my address. This statement you can write into the negative. He doesn't know my address. The other thing is a statement, he bought a car yesterday. You can change this sentence into negative. Did he buy a car yesterday? Like that. Changing from one, form to, or one pattern to another. Like transformation. Also included in the audio-lingual approach. Most of the students are familiar with this since they are learning the grammar since the middle school. Next one, integration. Integration, combining the two sentences into one. For example, they must be honored. This is important. Here, you can integrate these sentences into one. It is important that they be honest. Another one is rejoinder. Right? Student makes an appropriate response to a given pattern. Usually, students are told in advance to respond in one of the following ways, like related to the polite expression or answering the question, statements or agreement, or statements or agreement or statement or disagreement, or expressing surprise, like that. For example, the teacher will say, or another student will say, thank you. Yes, you will respond, you are welcome. Or like the next one is, what is your name? My name is Sam. This is called rejoinder activity. But in our daily life, we are using this one, even though we don't know it in a technical name. The next one is restoration. Restoration, students are given a sequence of words. Right? Yeah, they need to make a sentence into a meaningful sentence. Sometimes we also call this like the jumbled words. Right? Words are ordered, words are written, I'm going to say, disorderly. Students need to make the words into a sentence orderly, into a meaningful sentence. Yeah, like kids waiting school bus, the learners need to write it's waiting for school bus, like restoration. This activity is also familiar. Another one is dialogue. Dialogue, firstly, students need to listen, and then they need to repeat and memorize. They need to produce the correct pronunciation, intonation, stress, and rhythm usage. That's why the role of the teacher is also very important to produce correctly. Actually, the dialogues illustrate the socio-cultural situation of a target language, like greeting, opinions, exchanges, likes or dislikes. The other thing is some topics, standard SIP topics, like weather, hobbies, or the topics that can be used in the classroom. Right? That's why it is also good to learn the expression by heart. That's why some teacher suggest or learn the expression by heart or phrases by heart. So that you will produce the correct pronunciation and correct form. Now, let's see the underlying philosophy or theory. The audiolingual approach is mainly based on the behavioral psychology. It also has a strong and an impact on the teaching and learning principles of audiolingual approach. The behaviorists claim that, right? They know the secrets of all human learning, including the languages. Even though we are using the behavioral psychology mostly in education. Because behaviorism is based on the three elements. The first one, the stimulus, response, and reinforcement. So, stimulus, right? Stimulus is the teacher gives the stimulus to the student. Based on the stimulus, the student will respond. They also need to make the correction when they are producing correctly. Teacher praise them or encourage them to produce more and more. When they know that they are producing correctly, it is also reinforcement for them. That's why audiolingual approach is based on the stimulus response reinforcement or behavioral psychology. That's why firstly, teacher needs to give the stimulus or the information about the foreign language. Later, student will respond on the presented material. You can show the pictures, student will produce or utterance, or you can ask the question, student produce answer, right? And also reinforcement is a self-satisfaction of the target language used. So reinforcement can be given by the teacher, or student also get the reinforcement by himself because he knows that he can speak, he can use the patterns very, very well. This is also self-encouragement for him. That's why self-satisfaction of the target language used. So that's why audiolingual approach is based on behavioral psychology as stimulus, response, and reinforcement elements. Now, let's turn to the principles of the audiolingualism. Foreign language learning is a mechanical process. Because you need to learn again and again. You need to learn accurately, like memorization and repetition of dialogues or other drill patterns. By using these one, can reduce the mistakes and increase the correct answer. That's why this leads to the formation of good habits. Next one is the foreign language can be learned and taught more effectively. It is presented in spoken form. Before student will see the written form. sometimes the learner will not understand, but he can produce well. For example, if you look at the baby or the children in the primary school, right, they are, how can I say, repeating the poem stated by the teacher. If you ask them, they understand the poem? No, they don't understand because they are learning accurately. That's why they're spoken for. So oral training is needed for the foundation of the development of other language skills. And another thing is the meanings and the phrases of the second language should be learned in the linguistic and cultural context. This is related to learning the words by putting into the sentences. If you learn the words separately, it will disappear soon. That's why once you learn new words and new phrases, it is better to use in a sentence and also read aloud that sentence. That's why it will retain in your mind for a long time. That's why linguistic and cultural context should be learned by the student. And the next thing is teaching the aspects of the cultural system of the people, like the people from the Western countries, the way they are producing, the way they are greeting, or the way they are expressing. Like that. That's why teaching a language also includes teaching the culture. It is difficult to separate the culture from the language. So while teaching the language, as a teacher, you need to explain their culture. If not, the student will not understand well why they use this one. Okay. That's why the cultural system of the people also need to be learned by the student. So here the first one, our student need to memorize, repeat the dialogues and other drill patterns. Second, the spoken form comes first rather than the written form. Next one, words and phrases should be learned in the context and linguistic form. Now let's see the teacher's role. Here, Richards and Rogers, right, stated that teacher must provide variety of drills and tasks to give the learners motivation. And he also continued that if they have failure, it can result from the improper application of the method, not providing the sufficient practice to the learner. So the main principles, right, of the audiolingualism are like the minimization of vocabulary until all command and symbol structures will be learned, because it does not encourage to use words one by one or separately. It should be used in the context once you learn new words and new phrases. That's why teaching new vocabulary only in the context is also important. Another thing, learning the structure of the second language without explanation or memorizing the patterns of sound, order, and form. These are also the principle. Another thing is subordination of native language to the second language by translating foreign language into mother tongue. Right? Mother tongue. This thing is that you can think your mother tongue, the concepts in mother tongue, but you need to produce it in English. As I mentioned before, for example, the pattern, like you need to blank. So after to, you can use many words, like you need to go. You need to go to the office, or you need to get up early. You need to call me when you go to the pagoda, something like that. But even though you are producing the foreign language, the English, you are thinking in your mind, in your mother tongue. Next one, the learner's role. Learner, teacher needs to guide the learner by using lots of techniques in order to produce the correct answer. Here, it mentioned that at the beginning, right, students cannot understand the meaning of learning materials. But in the audio-lingualism approach, students need to repeat again and again all the information produced by the teacher. They need to imitate the teacher's intonation and pronunciation as closely as possible. That's why, from the teacher side, teacher needs to produce the proper intonation, the proper pronunciation. The next thing is, let's see the instructional materials. Audio-lingual materials are teacher-oriented because teachers is the leader in the classroom, because teacher needs to start first, and then student will imitate and will follow after the teacher. Here, it's mentioned that even at the early stage, student textbook is withheld. You don't need to use the textbooks because you just need to produce orally. But for a teacher, you should have a textbook. But for the student, you don't need to give them the instruction and materials or the textbook at the very first time. Next one, the other materials, reading and writing, come later. When the student already practice lots of pattern, they need to produce the new sentences, or they can write their own version based on the patterns given by the teacher. That's why reading and writing generally or gradually can be introduced. So the rules of the instruction and material, audiolingual approach is the teacher's oriented approach. So at the early stage, you don't need to give the books to the student, but you need to have books in your hand because you will produce as a model. And reading and writing comes later. The next thing, decline of the audiolingualism. Why? Here you see in the 1960s, right, linguists criticized the audiolingualism because of its weakness in the theoretical foundation. They are weak and they cannot use the patterns that they learn in the classroom in their real communication. And the next scholar is Chomsky, criticized the behaviorist theory. He claimed that this theory could not function as a model of how humans learn languages. For behaviorist psychology and behaviorist theory is mainly the habit formation. In order to produce something, firstly, you need to stimulate, you need to give stimulus, and the student will respond. But for the aspect of the human language learning, he said that they have the innate ability. I think this is mainly related to the natural method, because learning your mother tongue. Chomsky introduced another theory explaining that language are not acquired by repetition and imitation. But he said that it generated from the learner's underlying competence. He said that underlying competence, that people have their already, some competence. Some competence, because teacher does not need to give, 100% stimulus, but they already have the same competence in their brain or maybe in their mind. That's why generated from the learner's underlying competence. So That's why the Chomsky transformational grammar theory, audiolingualism, lost its popularity. Also led to a crisis in the American language teaching system. Transformational grammar theory. If you have time, you can browse, you can Google the transformational grammar or transformational generative grammar. There are many books for this theory. Changing from one form to another, because even though the teacher gives one pattern, student can change this pattern into another. But for the audio lingualism, teacher will give the patterns. Student need to use the pattern accurately. So when we look at the current situation or in some trainings, you will see that some are still using the audio-lingual approach. As I mentioned, the book written by Sia Tonsei, EEE. His book title is Learn Faster, Speak Smarter. So here there are lots of patterns. You can substitute lots of words on this pattern. So this is the decline of audio lingualism. Okay, you can discuss and contribute any knowledge or ideas. The next one is references. Are you also using the audio-lingual approach in your teaching? Yes. The next thing, for example, like learning the expression like how saying thank you in different ways, or the other thing is greeting in different ways. They are also related to the audio lingualism approach, because sometimes we are learning the saying thank you in different ways, right? This is also related to the audio lingual approach, because student needs to learn accurately the usage and expression, and then they produce again and again. By practicing again and again, it becomes into their mind and it retains in their mind for a long time. Here in the chapel, right? One teacher asked me when writing the lesson planning, firstly, both phrases and words are given and applying them when it comes to the right situation. Here, audio-lingual approach, it does not encourage to to learn first both phrases and words separately. Firstly, teacher gives the pattern, or teacher gives the full sentence. And then they can substitute the words into the sentence. They can substitute the words in the patterns. For example, another way is expanding the sentence. For example, the first pattern is like that: I always think. And student can expand this sentence into I always think about raising money. Another one expand, I always think about raising money for the victims. The next one is like, what are your feelings? What are your feelings about teens? or what are your feelings about teens using Facebook? Like that. This is kind of expanding the structure. Firstly, teacher gives the base form or base pattern. Student can expand more and more based on the given pattern. Okay, these are some characteristics, the rules of the teacher, the rules of the learner, rules of the material. You also learn the background of the audio lingual listening. So after learning this, what new knowledge do you get from this lecture? Yes, when you are given the reinforcement, you can say you are also using audio lingual method to some extent. For example, in the classroom, you ask question, right, to the student. Student will respond. This is also the characteristics of audio lingual method. Next one is also the additional information related to the audio lingual approach. Yeah, because for example, the second language or the foreign language that we are learning is alien to us, right? We are not familiar with it. That's why, firstly, we need to learn accurately. After that, we need to repeat again and again, and then we need to produce so that it will become, how can I say, our belongings. So this is also from another article. The objectives of the audio lingual method. Actually, the objective is for the student to use the target language communicatively. Right? That's why students need to overlearn the target language, right? Here you see overlearn. It means you need to learn a lot. You need to practice a lot until it becomes the automatic response. They also include the forming new habits in the target language and overcoming the old habits of their native language. For example, when you first learn the foreign language, your native language concepts and ideas interfere you. That's why by practicing the target language again and again, it will banish the old habits of their native language. So the main objective is to get the communicative fluency and also to overlearn the target language without stopping to think. And also to form new habits in the target language. Now let's see the next one, features of the audio lingual method. Audio lingual methods also the same kind of learning, which includes the loss of stimulus, response, and reinforcement. Even when you are teaching the educational subject, you are using the methods in education. you are using the stimulus, response, and reinforcement. Even at home in a family, you are using the stimulus, response, and reinforcement. Right? For example, once you ask that your family member something, firstly you ask your family member, their family member will respond. And also when he or she is right, you give reinforcement like that. So in our daily life, we are using stimulus, response, and reinforcement. Then is the result of experience and clear in changes in behavior, right? Result of experience. But you need to learn a lot. You need to experience the different patterns and language inputs a lot. Later, once you are able to speak, it means changes in behavior. That's why the aim is linguistic competence and accuracy. The next thing is foreign language learning is different from the first language learning. So when you learn the first language, firstly, we start learning in words form, right? For example, one word, two words, phrases. But for the audiolingual method, teacher will give you the sentence patterns or will give you a sentence. You need to learn the words in the context. The next feature is the process of habit formation. Habit formation. In order to get the habit to you, you need to practice a lot. Later, it will become your habit. That's why it is also the habit formation. Like habit formation also includes the discrimination and generalization rather than analysis, deductive learning or rule as in grammar translation method, right? Like discrimination and generalization. For example, teacher will give you the pattern. You do not analyze it into like subject, verb, object, or some into the specific grammatical rules, right? So generalization. And also in both attending to form and structure, like the patterns. So once you use the audiolingual approach, you will experience some errors. So scholars assume that these are the result of the first language interference. That's why they can be avoided at all costs in the course of instruction, because you need to repeat accurately to what the teacher said. That's why should avoid the error. Here, that's why teacher must specify what language the student will use. Control student interaction with the language. So the next one is the focus shifted from reading and translating a deductive explanation of grammar to listening, speaking, and the inductive presentation of the language patterns in the spoken language. That's why when you use the audiolingual method, firstly, you need to give the listening inputs. Students need to listen first, again and again, and then they will produce or they will speak. Now let's see some techniques of audiolingual method. Dialogues and pattern practice are the basis of the ALM. So this is a distinctive feature of the audiolingual method. The first one is repetition drill. Right? Repetition drill. Students need to repeat the lines of the dialogue produced by the teacher accurately and as quickly as possible. This is called the repetition drill technique. Next one, single slot substitution drill. For example, here, the teacher will say a line, usually from the dialogue, and also he says a word or a phrase. Students repeat the line from the dialogue, substituting the cue into the line in its proper place. For example, like there is a book on the table. The teacher says first. And also, later he will give the clue like there, a phone. Here, student need to produce. There is a phone on the table. And the next thing, there is a book on the table. As a teacher, you give the phrase under the table. Student produce. There is a book under the table, like that. So, firstly, teacher says a line from the dialogue, and then he gives cue, a word or a phrase. Student repeat the sentence by by replacing the words or phrase given by the teacher. Next one, question and answer drill. Right? This is our daily life situation. Even in the classroom, in every classroom, teacher asks the question, student respond to the question. So, student need to answer the teacher's question very quickly. Another thing, expansion drill. This drill helps the student to produce longer sentences bit by bit, gradually achieving fluency. Like for example, firstly, teacher produce like touch the food. And also, student expand this sentence. Like, don't touch the food or don't touch the food without washing your hands. And the next example is like that. Have you changed? Student can expand this sentence into that. Have you changed your mind? Or have you changed your mind about this matter? This is called the expansion drill. So the main structure is repeated first, and then student have to put cue or phrases in its proper place. Next one, multiple slot substitution drill. For the single slot substitution drill, student need to fill only single blank. For the multiple slot, student need to fill different slots into the dialogue line. When he fills the multiple slot, he needs to know what part of speech, whether he needs to, fill the noun or verb, like that, where it fits into the sentence. Actually, I think this kind of activity is related to the closed type question in the examination, right? In the question paper. And also the multiple slot substitution can also be used for the dialogues. Normally, including you, and also I'm already familiar with the closed type. The other name is also called the gut feeling. In the dialogues, there are lots of blanks. So students need to fill those blanks. They need to be careful about the subject-verb agreement in order to fit into the sentence. Another one, backward built-up drill. For example, for this activity, firstly, the teacher gives a long line of dialogue to the student. Then teacher breaks down the line into several parts. Students repeat the part of the sentence, usually the last phrase of the line, following the teacher's cue. Students expand what they are repeating part by part until they are able to repeat the entire line, like backward built-up drill. Teacher starts from the last, right? From the end of the sentence or the last phrase at the end of the sentence. Again, right? For example, we can use this kind of activity like, for example, on clothes. The expenses on clothes, or cut down the expenses on clothes. Or you must cut down the expenses on clothes. This is a kind of the backward build-up drill. Another example is going to bed. Going to bed after, and student will repeat going to bed. And also before going to bed, student will repeat before going to bed. Take the medicine before going to bed. Student repeat, take the medicine before going to bed. And also don't forget to take the medicine before going to bed. Student repeat, don't forget to take the medicine before going to bed. So this is an example of the backward built-up drill. Next one, chain drill. Chain drill is gets the name from the chain of conversation that forms around the classroom by students one by one ask and answer questions of each other. The teacher begins the chain by reading a particular student, asking him a question. Student respond, turns to the student sitting next to him. For example, teacher asks the student, what is your name? Student respond, my name is Rosie. And another thing is, student asks his friends beside him, what is your name? Another student respond, my name is Mary, like that, chain drill. Changing from one student to another, moving from one student to another. So chain drill allows some controlled communication, even though it is limited. Next one, complete the dialogue. Right? For the complete dialogue, selected words or erase from the dialogue students have learned. Students complete the dialogue by filling the blanks with the missing words. This is, I think, similar to the substitution drill in the previous techniques. The next one is transformation drill. You shall give the student a certain kind of sentence pattern, like affirmative sentence. And also, students need to change this affirmative sentence into the negative sentence. Like changing a statement into the question, or changing the active sentence into the passive one, or changing direct speech into the robotic speech, like that. This is a transformation drill. So this kind of activities are familiar to you and also for me, right? We're already familiar. We have practiced a lot this transformation. The next one is grammar game. The games also can be used to practice the grammar point within a context, so that students are able to express themselves, although in a limited way. A grammar game, you give the student into the certain patterns, student produce their own version based on the patterns. Another one is dialogue memorization. Students need to memorize the dialogues or short conversation. And also, they also take the role of one person in the dialogue, and also the teacher for the other role. This is similar to the role playing, right? Teacher take the role, and also student take another role. For example, there is a dialogue between two people. So one is Rosie, another one is Susan. So they can practice the dialogue by taking role. Another one is, that's why after the dialogue has been memorized, that's how the individual student might perform the dialogue for the rest of the class. Here, after memorizing, that's why, firstly practice and then memorize. Later, they can perform the dialogue for the rest of the class. This is a dialogue memorization. Now let's see the advantages of audio-lingual method. It was based on the scientific, linguistic, and psychological theories. By using the symbol patterns and the symbol techniques, this method widens the scope of the language learner. Syntactic progression of language patterns receives more importance than vocabulary and morphology. Syntactic progression, like expanding the sentences using different structure. Language learning involves in learning different skills. You are learning the listening skill, the communication, and also the social skills, right? We promote the use of the symbol technique. Here, disadvantages of this slide is similar to the previous slide. Because ALM was criticized in the 1960s from different sources. Firstly, the Chomsky, right, initiated a prolonged and heated debate on the methods, language, and learning principle. He argued that ALM didn't act as the panacea for teachers. Panacea ဆိုတာကတော့နတ်ဆေးလုံးလိုမျိုးပေါ့နော်။ဟုတ်လား ALM ကိုသုံးလိုက်လို့အားလုံးရသွားမယ်လို့တော့ပြောလို့မရဘူးပေါ့အဲ့လိုမျိုး So teachers complained that not all their needs were met by this method. Another thing is students expressed their, how can I say, dissatisfaction with the mechanical drills in classes, called them tedious and tiresome. It's like parroting and less like real communication that require outside of the classroom because you need to repeat after the teacher a lot, you need to practice a lot. That's why, like a mechanical process, I think it minimizes the creativity. I think that's why in the very first slide, you already seen that audio lingual method is transformation of language teaching from an art to science. Now, it minimizes the creativity because students need to produce exactly as the teacher, accurately as the teacher. The main aim of practicing like this is to be free from error, right? To avoid error and mistakes. So for this reason, since 1970, audiolingual method came to its end. It is still used in some places as the modern language teaching methods. Then nowadays, you can also buy books from the bookshop, right? Based on this method. As I mentioned before, some books written by C.R. Tonsei Idolo. But the weakness is if you use this kind of the method or pattern practice every time, students will feel bored and also they will feel dissatisfied because it does not give the creativity, student own thought. Okay, that's all for my lecture for tonight.